In game, I am Marshall at Odenknight for Star Trek Online. I'm here with my man Timber Wolf, and we're going to discuss everything that's coming up. Season 10, Introduction to the Pilot Ships.
Now, these just came out today. We just got a final introduction to them after seeing Captain Paris fly what looks like one of them around. It could be one of the options for the customization in-game. But here we finally have a look at what could be the base model for all three and some just basic information on what they look like. And we're going to go over those. And considering Odenknight does run a lot of escort Defiant type ships, I figured I'd bring him in to give me some real feedback on what he thinks about what these ships should be able to do and will be able to accomplish with the various setups.
Here we have pretty much the introduction on the ARC page. Link will be in the description later on. And they're pretty much just giving us a breakdown here for the pilot ships. You can either get them as individuals, as faction bundles, or as a super bundle. You know, they got to make their money. Granted, if they put out a quality product, people should be able to buy them. But
oh, absolutely.
Exactly. We'll just see exactly what comes out of the wash, and then people will be able to make up their minds at that point.
Now, one thing I am noticing is that they are trying to once again make good use of their new hybrid seating, as they are giving you a tactical pilot hybrid seating, which, depending on what the pilot abilities are, I haven't really experimented with them, but considering what they might be along with tactical pairing, and you also have the ability of having a science pilot or engineering pilot, could possibly throw a little bit extra ability in the mix. But like I said, I haven't messed with pilot. Have you?
I've messed with it a little bit, but just with the spec tree. I haven't maxed it out. I haven't been playing that much lately, but that's a whole nother video in and of itself. But based off of what I saw with the pilot tree, it has the potential to actually rival Intel. So you having an Intel pilot, either as a primary or a secondary, would be very, very good for most of your DPS out there.
And I have seen that, especially with, I believe it's Danger Zone and the accompanying one. I don't know what the name of the accompanying one that also adds on allies, but if you're able to keep your team within the radius of those abilities and have a lot of enemies in there as well, you could boost your damage potential considerably with the pilot tree alone.
Yeah, but that takes a lot of coordination to do that. I think Danger Zone was like something about 3 kilometers out.
Something like that.
Yeah, it's not that much, especially considering that you have people flying around in Manassas. Yeah, we're looking at you, Snipey, where this is literally zipping all over the place. So they may be within a 3-click range for about half a second at best.
Which, do you think that could be something as people play with it, especially with these pilot ships, possibly extending the range a little bit? Because I mean, you could be next to a scimitar in Odyssey and still be 3 or more kilometers away from your target.
True, but I mean, they kind of did this initially with the command tree. Well, actually, command abilities where you actually have waypoint markers.
Yeah.
And it was trying to get people to fly in formation. And if you hit all these markers within here, you get a damage boost. But it took too long to ramp up. And people were like, nah, you know what? This isn't worth the effort putting into doing this for such a mediocre buff, especially when you have things that are flying around there trying to kill you. At that point, it's like, forget this. It's not worth the time. It'll be actually more efficient to just blow the things up as they're standing there versus flying through this formation, then having the buff to be able to go and blow this stuff up. By the time you're done flying the formation, you've already killed everything.
Yeah, which if they were to up the damage buff or maybe shorten the maneuver, I mean, it does look cool when you're flying in formation, especially if everything is coordinated and you're doing enough DPS where you have what I would describe as a DS9 formation. During the middle of the Dominion War, you've got 4 or 5 starships in formation, and as you're flying, things are blowing up in front of you like you're going through an attack wave. That would be a fantastic look. It's just, as you said, the damage buff isn't as great as what you get out of Intel. And currently, in my opinion, the Intel tree is the end-all be-all for primary specking if you want to do damage.
I concur with you 100%.
Though pilot with its abilities could make for a secondary. Command maybe as a second to third, and I only say that because of before it was debuffed anyway, where not superfluous emitters. There was one where it was your weapons would decrease the damage output of your enemies, decrease their power levels. When they first debuted it, it was the Achilles heel. It was Achilles heel.
Achilles heel, yes.
And it was a massive drain on the target. They could hardly, if it was stacked at all, basically your enemy that you're fighting, especially like a tactical cube or a boss, would end up having no power levels, no DPS whatsoever. And you're just sitting there just destroying it. It's just, you're picking at it like it's bones, pretty much.
Yeah.
Then they had to nerf it, and I think they had to unstack it so it wouldn't do exactly that.
A part of me wonders if some of that nerfing was because of PvP implications. Because if you had 4 or 5 people running fire at will with a full command tree going into a PvP match, and you had guys coming in swarming at you, you just pop fall, and then suddenly, oh look, they have no energy levels. Oh look, they can't do damage to you. Oh look, they're toothless.
Yeah, especially with what I would consider, honestly, a PvP Polaron build because of the power drain. If you had a power drain build with command and the Achilles heel, first volley, and your enemy is nothing. They're just sitting ducks.
2 good procs, and yeah, game over for them.
Yeah. The torpedo exploits, knowing you know, if you haven't watched a previous video on my channel, if you haven't caught Odenknight before, he is a torpedo specialist when it comes to his escort ships, which I was going to ask you about on a previous video. Have you ever tried the command abilities for the torpedo exploits?
I have, and there's been some pros and cons with it. Now, for torpedo builds, the command tree, initially, at least the first tier, looks nice for you. But then you realize the proc rate is low, unless you're throwing a lot of beams on your ship in order to be able to proc it, or if you're relying on somebody else to do it for you. Where if you have 2 people running command, aside from yourself, then you have a high chance of gaining one of those exploits. The other problem that's actually in-game right now is that whenever you proc an exploit, there's a chance that the exploit's actually applied to you instead of to the target. So whenever you're getting a lot of hate from those Borg cubes, and you're wondering, how the hell did this torpedo just one-shot me? And it's not the invisible torpedo doom. Oh, heck, I just realized something. My resistance to torpedoes just dropped by about a negative 100. And you're wondering, how the hell did that happen? Oh, it's a bug with the exploit. I see.
Wow. See, I didn't know about that. So it's a reflective almost.
Yeah, it's kind of, but it's not supposed to be. Instead of applying the exploit on the target that you're aiming for, it's actually applying it to yourself. Which, yeah, you know, logic. But anyway, hopefully they will get that fixed. Hopefully they will.
Yeah, because a two team with command, especially if like I was running command with a beam boat, you were running command with a torpedo boat, that could be a dynamic duo of sorts because you're popping the exploits together, you're maximizing both levels of damage. So the shields are getting drained quickly by the energy weapons, and then the moment the shields are down, 1 or 2 torpedoes with the exploits, the target's done no matter how big it is.
And it was actually 2 of my hardest hitting torpedo hits. To my knowledge, it's still on record as the 2 hardest hits in game for Max 1 have been done under the command tree.
So no, see, that's good to know.
Oh yeah, the exploits, when they work big. They work really big.
So it's just be some minor things about the reflective property, but just minor bug fixes as far as making sure that the exploit doesn't reflect back to you, and then fine tuning it a little bit. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. My guess was initially when they released the command tree, it read all over it, hey, let's move some pure beam boats over to beam plus torpedo for a hybrid build, because the proc rate would be good if you're running 5 beams in a torpedo or 7 beams in a torpedo. That made sense for that. The proc rate would be high enough so you get those exploits so you can launch a torpedo, so that'll be viable for you if you're not juicing up your torpedoes. what the people in the kinetic community have been doing was trying to find a way to pigeonhole their builds into using the command to be able to gain those exploits every once in a while.
Which is entirely understandable. And that was the whole hybrid setup. It was something that I've asked, I haven't gotten a real answer for, and it was adding torpedo-specific slots to ships. So, for example, you could use a Defiant, or you could use my Tactical Odyssey. You have your 4 forward weapons and your 4 aft weapons, but then for that more classic feel, they also add in 1 forward and 1 aft torpedo-specific slot. So, I mean, yes, it would make it a 5-5 setup, but the extra slots are torpedoes only that, depending on what you're wanting to set up for energy damage-wise, you could exploit extra energy damage. You could have an extra kick when the shields go down with a torpedo. And you'd also have that classic feel for the average player, like, well, I want to run both. Well, this way you can run both, yet not sacrifice any damage-dealing potential of any kind and still have that classic feel.
Initially, I was kind of against the idea, but after literally sleeping on it and don't let your girlfriend hear this. You were running through my mind while I was asleep. but what you said, you're like, hey, you know what? This could make sense if we limited those slots to, like, say, just a generic torpedo, like, say,
so not ones that be a part of a set. Because my first thought was, if you were to do that, you could have the entire Borg adapted technology set. So you'd have the Omega torpedo in the say the forward slot, the kinetic cutting beam in the aft slot, and you'd have the console. You're saying
right.
just generic torpedoes.
Just generic, nothing of a set bonus, just either generic photon or generic quantum or generic plasma, whatever it is, based off of the type of shit that you're flying. Make it as canon as possible. So if you're flying your Odyssey and you love your 4-4 beam loadout, you'll then get a generic photon or a generic quantum for your loadout fore and aft. And it'll be up to Mark 12 or Mark 13 or Mark 14, but of that quality and no higher. That way, if you still have your build freedom with the cannon torpedo loadout, but you don't have an opportunity cost for having a torpedo, but you're also not going to get the best benefits out of the best torpedo that's top of the line.
True. Which that would also take away anything like the crystalline anti-proton torpedo of death.
Right. Yeah, you won't be able to throw that on there along with 8 beams. No, that's just crazy.
True. Okay, we got off topic there a little bit, but
well, we're actually going to bring that back in, though.
Yes.
Because here's where you can actually go in and give that type of loadout to a pilot ship.
Oh,
absolutely. You have all these other things here with it, like, hey, this pilot ship can only do, like, a lot of people are speculating 5-3 loadouts. I wouldn't be surprised to see one of them, like a tactical one, actually have a 6-2, because they want to focus on all guns forward, all guns blazing up front, facing your target, kicking back, especially with one of the abilities we're going to get to here shortly. I see everything being up front. I would not be surprised to see a 6-2 loadout right out the gate, at least for the tactical versions of them.
Well, see, that's the thing, because we haven't seen yet anything past a 5. My thing would be, I would think at most 5-3, or maybe 5-2s. I wouldn't think 6-2s, just because we haven't seen that level of forward fire yet.
Actually, we have in one ship, the Jemadar strike ship. I'm not sure if there are any others out there, but the Jemadar strike ship has a 6-2 loadout.
Really?
Yes, it does, and I would not be surprised if they put a 6-2 loadout for the tax and a 5-3 or a 4-4 for the engineering and sci versions.
Because obviously I haven't run a strike ship because I was not lucky enough to get one, but I didn't know it had a 6-2 loadout. That's intriguing.
I got lucky on one and I ended up selling it off, so I could get some.
Okay. Well, then you heard it here first. There is a possibility of a 6-2 loadout. Yeah, definitely not a 6-3. So it could either be 6-2 or 5-3.
I would honestly be shocked if they actually went 6-3. I would honestly call that game.
That'd be OP right there, simply because from what I've seen of just the Fleet Avenger, which is something I'm trying to invest in right now,
Mhm.
the 5-3 loadout, you can have the Dyson 3-piece set and you can have the Borg 2-piece set if you're running a dual beam bank setup on that ship. You can have a lot of weapon power resistance, crit chance, crit severity just in that one ship, and then have a massive amount of damage dealing potential on that ship while still having some for, you have your hull healing and all that for your bridge officer abilities. But you'd have a lot, and if they were to do a 6-3 and you're adding in a 6th dual beam bank, or if you run cannons, which of course they've stated here for the pilot ships, you can have dual cannons or dual heavy cannons. 6
I'm wondering.
cannons,
Yeah,
that would
I'm
be a
wondering.
tremendous
6 cannons.
amount.
6 cannons. You'll definitely need a leech for that thing, which
And
isn't
that would be the
rocket
next thing,
science.
is how would you leech for 6 forward weapons firing at once? I mean, granted, with me being a beam boat, and I've seen a lot of scimitars run 5-3 beam boats, that's a lot of power going at once. But don't cannons take a little bit more power to fire?
They take a lot of power to fire. The firing cycle for them, I'm not the greatest mathematician off of that. Jarvis and Alfred in game would be able to give you the complete breakdown on that. But the firing cycle for dual heavy cannons, correct me if I'm wrong out there, it should be like it's a 1-to-1, so that way it's not maximizing the benefit from leech. Whereas the firing cycle for beams, you would get the most benefit from leech, because by
Yeah.
the time the firing cycle is done, your energy level is charged up a bit, so that the next beam that fires out will have the most amount of power to be able to put into that beam. So you're getting the most damage out of it. Whereas cannons, it's fire, 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 recharge, fire, 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 recharge.
And of course, to further enhance that, you need, I believe, is Zamak as a duty officer to have. Was it? He did. No, not Zamak. There was one that had it where when you did directed energy modulation, it gives you a weapon power resistance rating.
Marion, I think it was
Marion.
Marion. I think
Marion.
so.
You get
Quote
8
me on that
seconds
because I'm.
of weapon power resistance rating. So that basically it's 8 seconds of pure fire.
Yep.
So
Plus you got
it's
the
not
two
just the
piece.
leech; it's also stacking various other things.
Yes, yeah. Plus the 2-piece adapted Borg set,
Yeah.
the kinetic cutting beam and the console, or the
Hmm.
torpedo if you want to use that. Yeah, that weapon power resist rating is huge.
And
You're
then you
literally
stack it
getting.
on something where you have it stacked up high enough with 6 forward weapons. You could
You're
do an
delivering
entire
murder.
ISA run, and your power level will never drop. Period.
You'll get like pulses of it dropping, but it's so few and far
Yeah.
between that you're just maximizing your shots everywhere you go.
Now,
Yeah.
with what we've got here, would you want to even try and speculate on the starship traits or the consoles? Because as far
I
as the
have.
starship traits, obviously, my first thought is they would do the destroyer packages. So you'd have extra energy damage, extra crit chance, extra crit severity, and then I would think, since it's pilot, either one of their mastery slots or the traits would be for enhanced maneuverability, defense, and damage immunity.
I actually think based off of this, I'm going to go completely left field here. And I'm thinking they just revamped all of the starship traits for the pilot ships. I think they go on to ground zero and started with something completely new.
So it's going to be something that we wouldn't even think about right now. It could be something entirely different, like a new type of, maybe it's an ability that you can activate in your hotbar.
No, I'm thinking more like passive maneuverability and passive to impulse speed. I'm thinking something else that'll probably work as well for defense, but a little bit some sort of unique method of giving a ship defense.
So kind of like
Then
the faster they can go with their abilities, the more defense they get, the more flight turn rate and turn speed.
something like that. I'm actually thinking like tier one will be kind of like the maneuverability trait, but as a starship trait, but they modify it somehow. Then tier two would be enhanced defense based off of your speed. Then tier three would be I don't know. I'm just pulling numbers out of my butt right now, but enhanced crit rate based off of how close you are to your target. And then tier four would be something about crit D or accuracy or
Well, they could do
bonus
crit
damage.
D and accuracy based on flight speed.
Yeah, they could roll all that into tier 3 for whatever they want there. Tier
Yeah.
4 would be something else completely different. I see it as a damage modifier somehow, but to what it's linked to, I don't know. And then tier 5 will be whatever they make up.
Yeah.
Which hopefully it'll be something canon related to pilot, but we'll see how it goes.
Now, I will say for the consoles, and just because, like I've said before, the DS9 in me, because that was one of my favorite series. And, you know, if you didn't like DS9 out there, I don't care. In the Pale Moonlight was the best episode ever. Try to argue with me on that one.
Thank you.
Anyway.
Thank you.
Anyway, with the consoles, I could see at least one as a mine layer.
Really?
I could, because of what the Defiant did in DS9 with the antimatter, cloaked antimatter mines. I could see it where you activate it, you lay cloaked mines, and they get to move, and then possibly replicate themselves twice. Only twice, not like, you know, thousands, but like replicate themselves twice, and then the next enemy that comes near them, they swarm detonate. So it's almost like the shrapnel torpedo from the Tal Shiar Adaptive Destroyer. Only they're cloaked mines that swarm. So the enemy would have to come close, because as we're just going to see later in this article, we're going to see the pilot abilities, or at least some that they're talking about. I could see them do that, where if you're worried about someone following you, you drop some mines and they swarm detonate the closest following target. I could see that for at least one.
I'm actually going the opposite way with this one. I'm thinking they're going to copy one of the subspace field modulators, not a subspace field modulator, one of the jump consoles. But instead of just jumping 5 kilometers behind
You're talking about the one that came out with the Constellation.
I think it's that one. They also get the same jump with is it the Dyson core or the Delta core? The Delta core.
Yeah, the Delta core. You get that transjector array.
Yes. I see that, but with a bonus to attack somehow, whether bonus damage or bonus hit, whatever, where after you jump, you get this bonus coming out of the jump, and then you can do all sorts of nastiness from behind them.
Though with me saying mines, I could see the Klingons having a defense mine.
Well, here's the thing, though. I mean, you get all new, all factions get all this fun stuff here, but then look at the Klingons.
They get a cloaking device.
Not even a battle cloak. Hello.
Yeah, and that's something I've argued about for a while now, is because the Klingons are all about battle. They would have the battle cloak. The Romulans would have the standard cloak, because they're not about using it in battle. They're just using it about subterfuge, which is one of their core principles as a race. I could see the Klingons with a battle cloak, hands down, all the time. Maybe, I don't know, maybe because they're thinking the Klingons are coming off of more peacetime than the Romulans having to fight for their survival.
No.
But I still say that the Klingons should have a battle cloak. They should have a battle cloak.
I'm sorry, but this is the second time I have to go off on this rant right now. This is the second time in as many occurrences of some new ship that's coming out where the Klingons not only get the short end of the stick, they're not even at the table to be represented. Yeah. Seriously. I don't play Klingon except for like one measly alt, but seriously, this is wrong. For all the Klingon players out there, my heart goes out to you. Wabi, my dead tar goes out to you, because this is robbery. This is wrong. You should look at what the Romulans get here.
They get their battle cloak and their singularity warp core, which
specialized
is base power,
singularity warp core,
and it's base power, which is basically almost like once it charges up, it's almost like a leech if you keep it at max, because you're keeping max power core. I've only played a Romulan once. I never went anywhere with it. I've been thinking about re-rolling one just to see what the hype is all about. But the other thing that comes to mind is if they do a 6-2 loadout, or if they went God mode with the 6-3, they have been trying to push different energy types for the players to use besides anti-proton, because yes, anti-proton is the leader in DPS, but they have been trying to find alternatives, which I do like. For example, the biomatter alternatives. I do like what they've done with those. One thing they could do is what they tried to introduce with the Dyson Destroyer, and have it where each one has one, or they've also did it with the Defiance, one weapon that's locked in that is a specific energy type to the race. So you'd have to build a certain build with it to go with that weapon. But considering the damage potential that they could put into it, it wouldn't matter. You could stack it all the way.
Yeah, I think you're thinking of one of the patrol escort for the Federation, where they have the phaser tail gun at the end of it.
The Tempest tail gun.
Tempest tail gun, yeah.
Was it the San Paulo has the quad cannons, the phaser quad cannons.
Quad phaser cannons, yeah.
And then the Dyson Science Destroyer has those protonic polarons that are locked in. You can't take those away.
I love me some protonic polaron cannons, man. DHC's protonic polarons.
But I could see that possibly just to further, okay, well, these are brand new destroyers. They want to represent the best weapon types for their specific race. Right. I mean, and with so many different options they've been pushing, I mean, with the Romulans, we'll look at the design here in a little bit. With the Romulans, you know, you've got new plasmatic biomatters. You've got Romulan plasma, standard plasma, caustic plasma. You do have some options to play with that basic energy type. Same with phasers. You can do phased biomatter and do something completely different from what they intend, but still do phaser damage.
Exactly. And speaking of which, with the damage types again, really, anti-proton doesn't start breaking away from the pack until you get to some really high-end DPS. So if you're running around, I mean, and, you know, a lot of people who are in the DPS channels are running around anywhere between 10 and 30K easily on most of their ships and ship builds.
Yeah.
At that range, you're not really seeing a huge difference between AP and the rest of them. Actually, the delta maybe, if I remember Vel's numbers, probably about 2%.
Yeah, because I can do 20 plus with plasmatic biomatter, and I've shown a disruptor build that can do better than anti-proton at 30K or less. Like, you can do viable damage with any type, but I think it's, like you said, when you get towards the high end, that's when the anti-proton can really push it out of the park.
My guesstimate would be around 60 to 70K range is when you start seeing that delta widen significantly.
Yeah, but then again, I mean, if I was a DPS player, I consider myself an average one. I'm not trying to go for the exorbitant amounts, but I do want to be able to do. I try to push myself. If I can do 30 to 40K,
you can beat the content in all except like the new Herald Elite ones.
Yeah, I mean, and for me that's fine because I'm running with a team that might be able to do the same amount. Okay, hey, we've got it done. Mm-hmm. But the fact that they're trying to come out with new types for the players to try, you know, they might not be the best when it comes to DPS, and the top 1% of the DPS channel will probably never use them until something does come out viably, but it is some way for the average player to slowly save up and be like, well, I don't run anti-proton, but my plasmas do fairly well. I can do 15 to 20K with them. That's not bad.
You can do 50K with plasmas, man. Yeah, you can.
Yeah.
So yeah, for with that said though, yes, anti-proton is still there. Felician, this is for you. Torpedoes are bad. We know that. Blah blah blah. With that said, I want to see you put together. Yeah, I want to see you put together a 50K torpedo build and do it. Go.
We did prove in the last video. If you guys that are watching this watch the 1.5 hour long video, and I should have cut it up into 3 parts. I didn't because the discussions were just absolutely awesome. We proved twice that a torpedo build can do 35K in ISA, and all things considered, most people. I mean, it's just horrible lag, jumping everywhere, missing shots. 35K in a torpedo build. You know, it's a specialized build, but come on. Think what he could do. Think of the possibilities that Odin could do with a torpedo build on one of these when they're done properly. I mean, I hate to think what you could do with a 6'3" torpedo build setup.
Actually, beyond a certain point, it becomes the diminishing returns are huge after 5. They're huge. At that point, it's like, okay, I'll run a beam and have it on auto fire at that point if I'm doing something of that nature.
Well, then if you're running 2 beams on that way you could get the shields down faster. You'd get more out of the torpedoes.
That could very well work. Yes, I could probably throw on the experimental proton weapon and either dual beam bank or dual array. Most likely a dual beam bank, and just hit hard with that.
Absolutely, that would be a full frontal assault.
Oh yeah. get
So
nasty with
let's
it.
go to the next section. Let's see
All
what
right.
we've got in the next part of the article here.
Now, this looks like one of the models are going to use, at least the art concept, for the Klingon ship.
And
Mind
like I was saying, it looks like a mixture of the raptor, the bird of prey, with a little bit of Vorcha mixed in, just the least little bit.
I see a hybrid SR-71 meets Gundam.
I didn't even see that.
I see it.
Well, even still, I do applaud them on the design. I do happen to like the design.
Yeah, I do like the design on this one too.
This is the first Klingon ship that I have actually liked. They've come out with recently that hasn't looked like either a literal brick. Well, I was going to put it nicely. It doesn't look like it's a giant brick floating through space. Which, granted, I know what they're trying to do. They're trying to make a different type of Negvar, which it's a big battleship, but you're going with a brick. And the Klingons, 99% of the time, they didn't use Negvars. They used Vorchas. They liked agile attack cruisers. They liked their bird of prey that they've been using for 200 years. Their D7s and Katinas for 200 years. They liked agile ships with lots of guns. This, to me, fits the bill.
Yes, 100%.
It fits the bill.
I applaud the artist who came up with this concept, because this looks like both it can handle atmosphere as well as deep space.
Oh, absolutely. And I can only see photon racks where it has, and some of the, I can't remember if it was some of the lore where they were talking about they used to use photonic missiles, kind of like the NX-01 did. I could see them having it where they could switch from torpedoes in space to maybe a more advanced primitive version of the photon racks if they were to go into atmospheric flight.
I would definitely go with that. I mean, technically speaking, if we want to get really nerdy about it, which we can, why not? Because this is STO, exactly. You could still have your photon loadouts work in atmosphere as long as it wasn't heavy, turbulent atmosphere. You'd be fine with it. With that said, I do not see a problem with them going with a low tech to conserve ammunition.
Of course.
And just have those modules out there they could just stack on there, fire it out, because this should be a relatively small ship. Load it.
Absolutely.
Go into your atmosphere, fire it, dispense with the pods, and then you still have your photons ready for whenever you need to handle something bigger.
Which, Cryptic, if you're listening, I think that'd be a cool console.
Just saying.
Just saying. Console universal photon racks. You fire a barrage of anywhere from 5 to 10 mini missiles doing a certain amount of kinetic damage, and they swarm detonate.
And they're boosted by the generic torpedo consoles.
And there you go. So they're all kinetic damage. You could boost kinetic damage. And someone that likes to do hybrid builds, they would be able to have beams, maybe a torpedo with their torpedo console enhancements, and also have something that they could pop every so often for additional kinetic damage when they lower the shields.
There you go.
All right, so we've got the pilot maneuver mechanics. Now, this is where they're trying to make it feel like they're going from, instead of us just sitting in space anchored, for lack of a better term, firing our weapons, they're wanting it to feel more like it is actual combat. We are dogfighting for our life, which I love the concept. I always get a DS9, deal with it. Just the dogfight aspect where you're bobbing and weaving around the big starships and your little Defiant type or whatever you want to call these. You're bobbing and weaving, you're firing, you're ducking. That's where I think they're trying to go with this. We're going to have to see where they do actually lead this to with these 3 maneuvers, because if done right, it would actually look the way they want to implement it as far as what they're trying to do. The UI is probably going to be a little weird for some people, because it looks like it's going to be a UI added on, just like the carrier UI.
Kind of yes or no. At least they have the option to do that, but it looks like built in. The mechanic's already built in, so if you double tap on WASD, you get the corresponding maneuver with it.
Yeah.
So you have afterburners, barrel roll left or right, and retro rockets to be able to hold the bricks on it. Which, physics aside, okay, we'll go with this part of it. I have no problem with this here. This is the only part right here that I have a problem with.
And then, see, I can understand that because when you're doing one of these things, your normal thinking is you're not going to get a damage immunity buff for just moving.
Right.
You might be able to. To me, it would have been better off if they had done something they had done in Intel. I think it was Intel or Pilot. No, it was in Pilot.
Pilot, rock and roll.
Well, not Rocket Roll, not Rocket.
Okay.
I think it's Tier 3 or Tier 4, where when you take damage to one side of your shield facing, the other shield facing gets a damage resistance bonus.
Right.
That to me would have been better. Where if, let's say, you are taking damage to your left flank, you do a barrel roll, and you end up upside down for a moment. Well, the hits are getting taken or against the increased damage resistance. So it would be a damage immunity, but not like pure immunity. You'd have an increased resistance.
I would actually welcome the brief immunity only if it was for that instantaneous move. Like, say you're getting hit by a whole bunch of beams right now, and they're putting a salvo of torpedoes onto you. If you dash suddenly, where you're kicking your afterburners or barrel roll left or right, you miss that entire salvo that has already been locked onto you.
Oh, absolutely.
Already calculated, okay, torpedo spread is a guaranteed hit. But if the game already calculates, okay, this torpedo spread that has launched is a guaranteed hit, but it hasn't hit you yet. If you then activate a barrel roll left or right, that hit is now 100% miss. So that plus any beams that are fired for that second, they will miss you 100%. That is where I could back it up. If they give you an immunity past 1 second, I'm against it.
And I can understand that because I have shown, I haven't shown it on video. I don't think I've shown it anyway, but it's extremely prevalent in CCA. Since we've lost our little damage immunity, if you fly to the direct center and you lost that 1 kilometer radius where you don't take any damage, one exploit that I was taught was you can, no matter where you're at, you're firing, you activate rock and roll less than 1 second before the pulse goes out, you'll get full damage immunity during the roll. So the pulse won't hit you. But the after effect is you get an additional, I believe it's 3 seconds of damage immunity that I've noted where you don't take any damage for 3 additional seconds. I can see the barrel roll. I can understand that. But once you start going past it, like you said, that's when it's like, okay, especially if you chain it to these maneuvers, you could have up to, I don't know, depending on the chaining, 15 seconds of immunity. And it just depends on their timers. But you could have it where you're just doing pilot maneuver after pilot maneuver, and you're ending up where you're destroying targets, you're taking 0 damage because your immunity is at 100%.
Or even worse, if you're the Cheesemeister himself, Spencer, you'll be able to chain this with rock and roll, with an immunity console, plus a battle cloak, plus making yourself untargetable.
I forgot about the untargetable and placates.
How can you forget that? That's literally 30 seconds right there.
Yeah.
30 seconds.
I don't use the placates and untargetables.
Yeah.
I don't use those. Yeah, you could chain that with the placate. There is a trait that once you get back down to a certain hull rating, you get auto placate. So you can wait until you get the auto placate, then activate some of this stuff, and then to do the manual placate. So you can.
And then which Romulan ship has that whole was it like backstep in so you don't die but you come back with like I forget what the ability is, but it's almost like a cheat death mechanic for those of you who are wild players out there. The ROMs have some sort of cheat death mechanic there where if they're about to die. It's
one of their temporal ships because I think it's also on the Wells class.
Okay.
I think
at least you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I don't have the proof on that. Don't take my word on that, ladies and gentlemen. It's because I don't have that information in for me. I have this in front of me.
Yes.
But
even then, yes, the ability to exploit this, depending on how it's implemented, is huge.
It's absolutely huge. Or it could not be. They could actually see it before it happens. And after you activate, let's say Afterburners is a 5 second. They're saying quick burst of speed. I say 5 seconds because that'd be quicker than evasive maneuvers. 5 seconds and then maybe a 15-second timer. So you can't chain them back to back.
Well,
They only last for so long, and then there's a 3 times recovery rate on them.
okay, I would see, like, say, each one of these four here having a 5 second or 2 second or even 5 seconds worth of disability, but
Hmm.
the immunity only lasting for 1 second. 1 second is enough to be able to have a bunch of torpedoes miss you, a couple beam shots miss you from all sorts of different attacks.
Oh, it could change the tide of the battle 1 second.
Yeah, 1 second. Yeah, so 1 second, I could see that. I'd be like, okay, you just sidestep all this danger, which is what I see the intent of this being.
Of
So
course.
yes, I can support the 1 second immunity. Beyond that, I see Exploit City written all over it.
Well, if that's the case, then they might go the route. Oh, correct me if I'm wrong. The Borg 3-piece console and weapon set. It activated a 1 second 99% damage resistance rating. It was almost like an immunity. It was their first real look at a pure damage immunity, but it was only 1 second for every, what was it, minute of combat or something like that.
I think
Like
it was,
it was a very rare proc, but
yes,
if you got it to
1%.
proc when you needed it to, it was monumental.
Yes,
If
it
they
was.
could activate it like that, that would be superb just by itself.
Something like a scraping effect, though, on your ship, where you're just barely dodging the damage and just
Absolutely.
barely getting something like that. That'd be good. I don't know how they're going to implement it, or if it's easy enough for them to implement
Or
it.
even
That'd be
better,
nice.
since you wanted to say the scraping ability, you
Mhm.
could see something, and this might take more coding and more thinking than we're talking about here. You could
Right.
almost see the Star Trek 6 torpedo scraping when they're in the combat zone. They're
Yes.
getting fired upon. You see one torpedo actually hit the shields but skip off.
Yes.
Well,
Yes.
during one of these, a barrel roll, it could actually reflect the torpedo, and then the torpedo become a wild torpedo. So whichever it hits first, friend or foe, it does the damage.
Ooh, that's a good idea.
And that would be a dangerous thing simply because you'd be able to balance it a little bit. It wouldn't be just enemies only. It could hit a friendly target and do damage. But that's the whole point is it's not hitting its intended target. It's now wild, free of control. So anything it hits might get maybe a 3% damage improvement because it missed, but
Hmm.
it can hit friend or foe. Or possibly, instead of it being wild like that, it could be reclassified as a targetable. And when after it's bounced off your shield, when it becomes a targetable, you can detonate it, but it has an AoE explosion that damages friend and foe.
I don't know about the targetable, because then you're changing the actual classification of.
And that's why I was saying
Yeah, that's
if.
gonna be too much. But the AOE explosion that doesn't care friend or foe, I like that. I like that idea. I like that concept. That's pretty damn good.
That would change the concept because any torpedo you see scraping a shield, all of a sudden you have to go, oh crap, I need to pilot away from this. Hey,
Yep,
use these pilot abilities to get away. And you could barrel roll away from the blast.
that'll be a good idea.
And you'd have that 1 second of vulnerability. You would be able to fully escape it.
Yep. Here's where they're talking about the whole, you can customize the actual maneuver itself, either by using the keyboard or by using hotkeys, for example, or just having something within the UI that you'll
Of
be able
course.
to put on there. So,
Which most people don't use a lot of their keyboard, so it'd actually be pretty easy, depending on what kind of keyboard or mouse they have, as to program very quick hotkeys for this.
I see people using the scroll mouse up or mouse down, if they have that implemented in the game, to be able to use the retro rockets or the afterburner. I see that very easily.
I could even see someone, depending on their piloting, because I use my mouse. My mouse, as far as combat, is merely camera control.
Okay.
But I could see someone using it when when I first started playing STO, they were saying using the mouse as pure piloting is better. Well, I could see when someone's setting it up, and I don't know how it could be set up because I've never played with any of it, where if you jerk the mouse forward, it's Afterburners. If you jerk it to the side, it's a barrel roll.
I don't know if any of the razors do that, but as far as piloting itself, I use my mouse in both for both camera look while I'm using the keyboard to fly, and then I could swap back immediately to flying with the mouse while I'm getting ready to do any of my firing for like high yields or spreads in
Now,
that mode. So I flop back and forth.
with these ships, which type of piloting would you suggest, considering what they're trying to implement? Would you suggest a keyboard feel or simply using the mouse for piloting?
I honestly see this as an improvement for people who use both keyboard and mouse, because then you
Okay.
can, depending on how you do it, and it's like, say you have like a 6-button mouse or a 7-button mouse like I do, I could hotkey 2 of, Afterburners and retro rockets onto mouse button 5 and 6 on my thumb, pilot with the mouse while I'm getting ready to line up a shot. As I'm approaching the target, I'm like, say 11 clicks out, pop Afterburner, pop in to about 9.9, fire everything, and then click off to retro rockets and pop out of range.
Which by the time you'd fire it all, everything off, presumably, oh God, that sounded terrible. Presumably,
yes.
The cooldown would be gone, and you'd be able to instantly pop retro rockets.
Yes.
Which that would actually be fantastic.
Yeah, even if I loiter for 1 second while I'm in firing range, that's still 1 extra second for me to pop something else before I pop retro rockets and bug the hell out.
Exactly. And as you can see at the bottom of the screen, we have the Romulan ship. Now this, me and Odin were talking about this before we even started, as the picture clears up a little bit here. And to me, I was saying it looks like a mix of, they took part of the design feature from a Romulan Strike, which if any of you out there played Star Trek Armada for PC, that's it was kind of the Romulan version of the Defiant in that game.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like they took the top of that and hybridized it with the top of the Cheshire Cruiser Dreadnought, whatever it was.
Yeah,
big star of death. Gaold Hatak, for those who get that reference. And painted it green with some minor changes. Granted, it's an interesting design. I'll give whoever did the design credit. It is interesting. It's not the first thing I would think for a pilot ship, though.
I was looking at this and I saw the fuselage being the Delta Flyer, but having bits of it hacked off. And then they fused the inner part of the Cheshire wings, and then they flared out the outer parts of it to make it look like some sort of weird attack bird with, like, I don't know, something scary,
almost like talons. Yeah
talons, but it seemed very superfluous. And if I was a ship designer for the Romulan Star Empire and I designed this, somebody would say this is not going in the atmosphere, which I see the other 2 pilot ships being atmosphere capable.
Absolutely.
No way in Hades. No. This is also, what's the talons there for? Oh, yeah, you're going to do it for the look because the Romulans are really big on looks and intimidation. Yeah, but this is kind of like fragile. Oh, I could snap that off in a heartbeat. And then what?
Yeah.
If they got rid of those, I would have saw this as a much more intimidating ship.
And for me, honestly, what they could have done, and if you're from Cryptic, we are being critical of the designs because we are people that are going to fly them. We are people that like to actually see what we're flying before we fly it. We gotta like the designs. You got to. For me, the overall design, the only thing I would change for myself personally is the outer flarings. I would fuse them into one piece, and I would forward sweep them. That way, it almost looks like it has wings and it's coming down on its enemy. So it has the forward swept wings, and it's like this daunting bird about to come down on you.
I can see that.
That for me would make the ship perfect because you've got, with the design, you've got what looks like a beak and a mouth. You've got the wings and all of that. You give it some forward swept wings, you've got a bird of death that's small, agile, and probably could just do hit and run attacks with its battle cloak like nobody's business.
I can see where you're going with that. I personally would get rid of them, but either clip the talons or fuse them all into one and make it look like one big fanning wing just when you're coming in for a strike.
And of course, we are saying this only seeing one of the 3 options for each ship. Of course, there are going to be 3 different options for each starship. So this For all we know, this could be the science variant, which that is going to be a little weird.
Yeah.
I did want to point that out and get your thoughts on that, because obviously, these are all pilot escort ships. These are being built as escort destroyers. So obviously they're tactical in nature. But since there's going to be 3 options, you're also going to see an engineering variant, and you're also going to see a science variant. Now, for me, that's a very weird combination, to have a science escort destroyer or an engineering escort destroyer. Do you have any kind of thought process on that one, as far as how that could be exploited, maximized, or even run at all? If anybody would even want to attempt to run a science, I mean, you're stacking more than likely 5 science consoles, 4 tacticals, but only probably 1 engineering console.
I would see that being beneficial if and only if they did a revamp on the powers, both existing as well as what they have coming down the pipe, if they have anything coming down the pipe, to where you have these baseline powers that all 3 can use for whatever bridge officers they have. But then your captains will get a specialization bonus. So their TAC captains will get a slight specialization bonus for tactical abilities. Engineers will get a specialization bonus for bridge officer engineering abilities. And science captains will get a specialization bonus for science-oriented abilities. And that way you're maximizing your slots corresponding to your career. Your career actually means something for being able to not just fly, but also do damage as well.
Mm-hmm.
And you're not having tactical captains maximizing the damage on the other 2, both engineering and science, whereas those engineering or science captains can't maximize the damage as much as the tacticals can.
True.
You're getting this, okay, all 3 of you can use these abilities, but if you're a TAC captain or a science captain or an engineering captain, you get a bonus additional benefit from these abilities because of your specialization. If they implement that way, I would say, bravo, keep up the good work.
Which, as I'm thinking about it, one thing they could do is innate passive bonuses. So for example, for tactical captains, obviously they get their crit chance or crit severity. Mm-hmm. But possibly for engineering, one of their bonuses would be improved weapon power efficiency, mm-hmm. and a passive ability similar to directed energy modulation, where they have more of an ability to penetrate shields. And then maybe for science, they have the passive particle generators for exotic damage to further boost their science abilities, since they're getting that science buff for being a science captain on a science destroyer.
We see that happening there.
You broke up there a little bit.
Sorry, so I definitely could see that happening there if they have it set up that way. But it would require a decent revamp on how those powers are implemented, mm-hmm. and what bonuses they're going to get based off of the specialization.
True. And of course, you've got these, you've automatically, all of them are going to have command tactical pilots, which depending on which ship it is, that could be your only tactical slot that you have. Mm-hmm. But they are trying to push the lieutenant science, lieutenant engineering, and pilot. So you could see you might end up seeing like a commander science with a commander tactical, which is very rare. But then again, I didn't know about a 6-2 weapons loadout. So it could be something where they are debuting 2 commanders, one for the specialization, but also one for the actual ship. So you're maximizing both what the pilot can do, but also what the captain using it for could do.
Could do as well. I can see that with that going with that.
Yeah.
Now, the interesting thing here, and didn't they do this with the Intel as well, where they had one for, I'm trying to remember, for the Phantom. I think there was one where I'm pretty sure you had at least a lieutenant commander or commander that was Intel, and then tactical, and then another one, I think it was science, that was also Intel science.
Yeah, because they wanted to maximize not just exploitation from their tactical, but since they were making them intel, they were supposed to be more critical, I guess, of their stealth and science abilities as far as further exploiting. That's what it seemed like to me, is that you could sneak in and use science abilities to cripple them and then maximize your damage against them.
Mm-hmm. But it looks like the specialization seats then will be for whichever variant of the ship that you buy.
True.
Yeah, so you'll have, like, if you get engineering, you get a commander engineering, and then for the science, commander science, etc. I don't know about the lieutenant rank. It looks like it. This is where it's kind of ambiguous, but the assumption would be the lieutenant seat would be a hybrid seat for whichever.
Yeah.
Pilot hybrid for whatever. Okay.
Now, I will say, and this was posted in the forums, that, of course, we're going off the direct ARC website. You can see that it's discussed in the forums. One thing that was discussed was truly universal seating. Now, I could see this if, and I can't remember what page it was on, and quite honestly, I don't even know if we can show this online. Can we?
What? Of course we can. Come on, man. This is
okay,
the 21st
cool.
century.
Oh, hey, I don't know all the content disclaimers and credits. I'll just have to throw a whole bunch in the description. But they were saying truly universal seating. Now, going with this pilot setup, I could also see them, if they were to go truly universal with a T6 Defiant. I will say T6 Defiant. They could retroact it to the pilots, but just an escort destroyer T6, where you have pilot abilities in one hybrid seat, but command abilities in the other to exploit torpedoes. Because it is an escort, you want to have a torpedo because it's a small ship. It wants to hit hard.
Right.
They can exploit torpedoes on one type where you could have pilot command, or another one where you could have pilot intel for your beam weapons and surgical strikes.
Well, command also has abilities for energy weapons too, where you have superfluous emitters, if I remember correctly, or was it suppression barrage?
Well, I know it was superfluous arrays, because superfluous was so long as the hull and or shields, I should say, of you and your allies are at 100%, you get a damage bonus per ally that represents.
Okay, then it must be suppression barrage. Then that was the beam buff ability, the bridge officer ability. Then that you can use for command. So that'll work with energy weapons, and then concentrate firepower will work very well for torpedoes if necessary.
And
of course, I'd be jumping for joy on that one.
Of course, and put that on an escort like these pilot ships. Well, then you've got the perfect pilot ship right there that could combine energy and kinetic to make something that would honestly be truly beautiful to someone who likes to run them.
Hey, Cryptic, you want to sell ships? Take the advice.
I'm just putting it out there. This is something you always are pushing beams and torpedoes. That's hybridizing two separate specialization trees with two separate weapon types to make something that also is going to give the players that like the cannon feels, as far as what they see in the show, their ability to have a cannon feel ship as well.
While still pushing the numbers.
Yeah. So you're branching out to 3 different audiences. You're giving them all a ship they like.
Exactly.
All of them have a ship they like, and it all can do very well with the abilities.
I think you got that, man. I like it. I like it. Wrap it, package it, deliver it.
Oh, absolutely. One question: why would it not have been a bird of prey for the KDF? Well, because they like selling skins.
I guess so.
But something tells me that if you were to buy the 3-pack, you could have something very close to a bird of prey for your Klingon pilot. Just like you could probably have something very close to a Defiant if you combined all 3 packs of the Federation. Not sure for the Romulan, but it would probably look like a mini Dederitic smashed into a Valdor.
I don't know. Some people were talking about a Tavaro remake coming out of this thing.
Oh, well, maybe not a Tavaro, maybe a enhanced Delon.
An enhanced Delon, really?
that to me could work. It would depend on what the others two look like and what the customization looks like, because that was something they stated with the command, is they wanted to push customization to the limit with the command ships. There's nothing to say that they would not do that also with these ships, where you can customize everything on each ship so long as you buy the 3-pack. And you could customize it where it looks like a fighter, where this Federation ship looks like it's a fighter got launched from a fighter bay, or you could have it as a Defiant look-alike.
I don't know. I still think the best out of the three would be the Klingon one here, because this looks
absolutely.
This is slick, man. This looks like it can go atmospheric, full atmospheric, with no performance hit, and then go straight into space. No modifications needed. It's straight. It's beautiful. It's got sleek lines. It looks like it'll dog you at night. It'll scare you in the day, and it'll be godlike in space.
Oh, absolutely. And like I said, considering the 3 different types they put out, you can have a bird of prey look-alike. You can have a raptor look-alike for all intents and purposes.
We'll have to see what they come out with.
Yeah, but considering the customization, you could have something that looks like a bird of death, and it still look nice. I'd be willing to bet that pod right there behind the head.
Right.
I bet that's customizable. I bet there's at least 3 options for that.
I would see this being there for science, and then something else for engineering and tech. That'll probably either go on the fuselage or right up here in the front where it looks like the bridge area.
Yeah, with the tactical being very angular and looking like it has about 5 torpedo launchers on it.
Something. Yeah.
Oh, I can see that in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
So I can't wait till the details come out. Then we can tear it apart for its details.
I would love to be able to see, first and foremost, aside from this, I would love for them to be able to actually fix, not just address, but fix the performance issues that they're having with the game itself.
Well, yeah, that is an underlying tone with everything. We saw that in the video that we did, the last video that was on the channel posted, as far as our 1.5 hour long run showing off different builds. There are still lag issues in the game, especially in the older STFs. ISA has been around forever, and the lag is showing in it as you're adding in new content, new powers. After that video was made, a test was run by Odenknight's friend Proteus and several others, where they had 20 command battleships in Starbase 24, which is a 20-ship run, and the command abilities were overloading it to the point where the server could not handle it, and you were seeing 1 frame per second. You were seeing massive amounts of lag. And this is just handling the newest ship, which is what their purpose was with selling the ship. They wanted everybody to have it and run the new contact with them. Well, they're running the new content, and the newer powers are starting to lag out the servers, which has now become an issue, because now people don't want to run the new ships that are lagging out the servers. They want to run the older ships, might not have all the bells and whistles they try to put on them, but they know they can run the content happily with whatever build they run, whether it be DPS or whatever, but they won't lag out.
Yeah, props to Sarcasm Detector, who does have his own YouTube channel and does some wonderful descriptions as well as tutorials out there. So you might want to check out his channel. Once I get the link, I'll link it below.
Absolutely.
Props to Snipey, props to Spencer, props to everybody, except for that one guy who brought us freaking, help me out here. The stupid Romulan battleship that everybody loves to brag about its huge superior DPS. The name just escaped me for the life of me.
The Scimitar?
Scimitar, thank you, yes. I don't know. I just hate saying that name for some reason.
Well, and see, here's the thing, because it's literally, especially for the Romulans, it is the end-all, be-all. And I get it. You know, it was a big ship. It was the end-all, be-all when it came to Nemesis. But at the same time, that was, let's see here, that was 2379. We're in 2409. We're 40 years away from that. I'm sure they would have a ship bigger and badder than that. Now, whether that's down the pipeline for Cryptic is unknown, but the thing is, in order for people to get away from that big, bad, end-all, be-all, it's got to be better than the scimitar. And so far, and I've asked Scott Ross about this. He was on the last video. The scimitar still beats out the newest Romulan battlecruiser designs as far as ship layout, bridge officer abilities, everything hands down. And that includes the command battlecruisers. And I thought the command battlecruisers were going to give the scimitars a run for their money, and they didn't.
Well, I will say this about the scimitars, that they are so OP. The person who is number one in the DPS channel uses a fleet patrol escort.
Yeah.
Well, it's an organized run. But with that said, yes, the scimitar is a very powerful ship.
Yeah.
All hail the god scimitar with the Romulans and the AP, the superior race, blah blah blah.
Yeah. And that's why I still say, and people, you can quote me on this. Within a year or so, they're going to realize the only way to get everybody either T5U scimitars, their T5U Odysseys and Borderskews that they've built up, the only way to get them out of them is have a T6 version that has a few extra bells and whistles to make people want to buy them to get out of the T5Us. It's the only way, and they're going to have to keep the same bridge officer layouts. They're going to have to keep the same weapon layouts, and just in general keep it the exact same way that they were for T5Us, just add on to it. Because if they change a scimitar, the T6, to a 4-4, I guarantee you they won't sell a single one.
I don't know. I would think if they shook
just
it up
because
a
of the
little bit,
forward firing, because
true.
Because that's been a lot of the big DPS for people that buy those. They love 5 double beam banks up front. I know you can run it as a beam array ship, but from what I've seen, the bigger DPS is the 5 dual beam banks.
True. All right.
In that one, I could see no sales.
That is very true, because if you shortchange them on that offensive power, they'll be like, nope, forget it. If they add something or modify a bridge layout, you might see, either yes, this is great, or no, this is not so hot. All depends on how they implement it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
But they need to shake it up a little bit there. But as far as releasing, just a little though, not too much. But releasing any of those T6s, any of those variants from the T5U to the T6, you're going to have people buying them in droves.
Yeah,
they love those ships.
Yeah, and that's the moment I bought mine. I have tried other ships. I've tried the Breen Shelgret, which I love. The Breen Shelgret. It's a great escort destroyer. It cannot get me away from my Odyssey. And even though I know it turns like the Titanic, I still like the ship. I like the look of the ship, but I love what that ship can do. And plus, for me, the challenge of making it do what a Breen Shelgret can do with its maneuverability.
True.
That's what I like. Now, I will run a Shelgret. Like I said, I am planning on getting a Fleet Avenger, because that seems like just a beast of a ship, but I do want to try the Dauntless.
You know what? The Dauntless might actually be a good ship for you. It might actually be.
Because I liked what Proteus did with his Fleet Dauntless as far as stacking exotic damage and DPS. And that's something that's not, the super DPS elitists. That's actually building specific for his ship and making it work beautifully.
I would see you having a field day with a Dauntless.
Oh, absolutely. Plasma weapons included.
Oh, yeah.
Plus Embassy plasma explosion consoles.
Yeah.
I'd have a heyday. No, better yet, and I didn't get to explore it. And you'll have to forgive us. We're mostly done with the pilots. We're just talking randomly at this point. Plasmatic biomatter with plasma explosions.
And chemosite.
Holy.
You're done. You're done.
Well, anyway, we've discussed all we can going on the article. We're waiting on more information to come out. Of course, it's probably going to come out. Normally when they post these kind of things, it's a week away. So at the very earliest, we could see these come out Thursday, or they could wait a week and just tease us for a long time. But something tells me Thursday. I don't know why, but I think that's what they did with the last pack that they did. It came out about 4 or 5 days after they previewed them. So we'll see in the next week or two as they come out. The moment we have any information on them, we're going to show it off to you. We're going to discuss it. We want to bring you as accurate as information as possible. But until then, I'm Timberwolf.
And I'm Odenknight.
and we are signing off. See you guys.
See you out there.